And there are aspects of fitness that come out of bodybuilding that are useful for you in your everyday life. Looking at the whole person and what we're looking to build from confidence and for our better relationship with our body, it's just not done when we're placing all of our, like, how well we do on how well we look. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Thick Thighs Save Lives podcast. I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Rachel. Welcome back, guys. Another great week. Another week where my kid is sick and he's home, and he may or may not shoot me with a Nerf gun during this podcast.
You know, sometimes it'd be like that. Honestly, I think every parent who has made it to this point in the school year is probably thinking the same thing because, like, just looking back at the whole school year, I'm sure all of you guys have been like, man, a lot of sick days, and now we're looking forward to summer vacation.
Summer vacation. It's coming. I can smell it. It's always like the weirdest thing as a parent because you're like, oh, I'm so sick of school. I'm so tired of this. I just want, it to be summer vacation. And then you realize that then your kid's just around all the time.
So I've been watching this. I've been following this couple who post a lot of like parenting things. And one of the guys made this cool video that said, I mean, it's just going to put a little thing in perspective for a lot of people, I think. He said, like, you only have 18 summers with your kids. They say you only have 18 summers with your kids. And that's like really, when you boil it down, like such a short blip. But he went further into saying, like, but I don't believe that because you create a home that they want to come back to after, they look different. Those summers begin to look different when they're, grown and they come home here and there or whatever. But when you create a home, they still continue to come back. But those 18 summers definitely look different as you move along. But there is only one where he's 7.
That's so true. And he is such a joy and pleasure, but also he is a freaking menace.
Definitely a menace.
I'm excited though. I'm excited. He's at a cool age. I like 7. So today we wanted to take an opportunity to tell you guys about a very exciting happening with our TTSL programming, which if you do not know, CBG has a fitness programming everything for you. Everything's done. Warm up, strengths, metcons, cool downs, the whole thing, 5 days a week. And it's incredibly good program, if I don't say so myself.
Before you just skate over some of those things, I just want to break down what that kind of looks like a little bit, because sometimes when we say metcons, it's like people are like, what do you mean? So just what a session looks like: warms you up, gives you some type of strength building, gives you some conditioning, and then has a cool down for you, all in the same 1-hour session. And there is opportunities for people who have limited access to some equipment. You might only have some dumbbells, or you might be working from home, and there are tracks available for you that you're still able to do the full day's programming with limited equipment.
I'm like not good about remembering to promote it, because like the dumbbell track
I got you.
It's so essential. It's so essential because it's like when you travel, you can still do your TTSL workouts. When you like can't make it to the gym, you can still do your TTSL workouts. Like literally an entire week's programming with just a pair of dumbbells, and you can get like a tremendous amount of fitness in. And it's like sometimes you just decide, like, you know what, I'm not going the gym route. I don't have a home gym. Like, I'm just going to do this in my living room. And you can get full access to like complete body programming. And all you need is a pair of dumbbells. So I know I always.
No, you do a great job. Sometimes just when you're in the mix of, the programming and going through and thinking so much about the ins and outs of it. And I think anyone who works on something really hard is going to relate to this 100%. You kind of like brush over some of the amazing qualities about it because you're like, I'm so in it. But for me, I'm sure you guys know, like I'm very busy. I'm a very busy gal. I'm always like here and there. And I have dumbbells that are at my house that and everyone's like, oh, you always get to the gym. No, I don't. I
No.
always get movement in, which is very important for me. It's very important for my mental health and my physical health. But that's why I keep dumbbells at the house, because sometimes I'm not able to get to the gym with whatever my schedule looks like, and I'm still able to do full programming where I'm like, wow, that was really hard.
Yeah, and it's like on those days where you're not able to get to the gym, those are not the days where you're gonna sit down and plan out your own program. I'm sorry. It's just like that day is just about to crash and burn at that point. And so the
You're
last
just holding
thing,
on to it.
right, you're like, all right, I'll get out there with my dumbbells, but like nothing else from me today, you know? And
Hmm.
so having everything all set for you. So all you have to do is just go down your list and go like, okay, I'm hitting this, I'm hitting this, I'm hitting this. And I know someone has thought of that this is complete programming and is appropriate for me today. It just takes that layer out. So I have been in the weeds. I have been thinking about this a ton. And I actually have a new cycle for TTSL ladies this year. This is a cycle we've never done before. And it is something I'm super, super excited about. And it is the first annual TTSL bodybuilding cycle. And I wanted to take a couple of minutes to just talk today on the podcast about why a bodybuilding cycle. Because if you don't already know, TTSL is primarily CrossFit style programming, high intensity. We work Olympic lifts, we do a lot of compound movements. And so I think people might be surprised to hear we're doing a bodybuilding cycle, but I have some really exciting things to talk to you about today on why this is going to be a really, really beneficial cycle for anyone, beginners, advanced, all the people are going to love this cycle.
So I don't want you, if you're listening right now and you're like, I'm not going to do TTSL, I'm going to skip this episode. Stop. Pause right there, because this episode is not just about TTSL, not just about the programming. We're going to talk about bodybuilding, that type of training as a whole, and we're going to talk about the benefits and some of the drawbacks to just following some type of bodybuilding. So if you're a gym goer and you are following some type of bodybuilding style of fitness, maybe you're not following a specific program, but maybe you're following your own split, which usually looks something like arm day, leg day. Sometimes we do push pull days, things like that, for bodybuilding. Tune into this episode. Even if you have no intention of going away from that style, I think you can pick up some beneficial tips to help you maximize your training a little bit more and kind of just like take a better look at the bodybuilding style of fitness, kind of from a bird's eye of people who have done it.
Yeah, I think it's such a good point that you brought up about the fact that the vast majority of gym goers, especially beginners, start their journey in the gym with a typical bro split, right? That is what we know. That is what we've been sort of brought up
Common.
on. I mean, we, came up in a gym era where it was like Arnold and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
these are, the
I'm
like
up, Carl's. Well, here's the thing, like it was traditionally anything with weights was traditionally for men. And once women started breaking into that space of like, how do we start bodybuilding? How do we start to build some muscle? We kind of followed the same type of training, which was bodybuilding, because that was the segmentation into getting into the weight. So if that's kind of what brought you over to the weight section, welcome. I love you. So
welcome, I
happy you're
love you.
here. And
Yes.
and there are so many things to be gained from every aspect of fitness that we've kind of dabbled into, but there's also some things that you just need to critically look at, which can be difficult. But if you're looking to get better in any way, you have to look at something critically and find where the holes are. We're going to tell you where the holes are, so you don't have to find them yourselves. We've already found them.
That's what we do. We poke
Sorry.
holes. We poke the holes. And, it's typically one of the things that I like to start with when we talk about bodybuilding and why someone has chosen that route. Most people are not exactly sure why. They just feel like that's sort of what you do in the gym, right? You go to the gym, you do arm day, you do leg day, you work abs after. That's just sort of a typical route. And so, I want to highlight the fact that there are aesthetic changes that are particular to bodybuilding and the composition of a bodybuilder. We know this, right? And they are definitely appealing. I think that if you're a person that is like, you know what? I'm in the gym because like I want to look good naked. And like I don't have any qualms about that. Like I know you guys are like big on health and I'm here for that. But like I really am wanting to look better. I think that is a typical route for someone to go, sort of a bodybuilding track, right? Because they think that is the most aesthetically, and I want to talk about it because there are aesthetic gains to bodybuilding, and that's why we're going to be introducing this cycle. But I think that most people also find it less intimidating if you ask 9 out of 10 people to correctly identify a bicep curl, they can. If you ask them to correctly identify a power clean, not so much, right? So, I mean, there is an intimidation factor that is taken away with bodybuilding in isolation because it's like sort of the norm. You see it a lot, you can recognize it. Okay, I'll go do that, right? And it relies primarily on hypertrophy methods, which, refer to the size of your muscles.
Well, hang on. I think there's like 3 reasons why people tend to choose, and I think you hit 2 of them really well. I think there's 3 reasons why people tend to choose. They're common. It's very common, which we really hit on. It is slow and controlled, which is less intimidating, which people associate with being less likely
Safer.
for injury.
Mm-hmm.
So they associate that with like, I'm not moving fast. And that's why CrossFit is taking a lot of hits, not because statistically the injuries are higher, because the numbers actually don't support that. But what they're seeing is that like that looks really hard and crazy. And like that looks like an injury. Oh my gosh, ouch, my knees, things like that. You hear people say that all the time. So when people see slow and controlled movements, they associate it with being less likely for injury. And the third thing is it's extremely repetitive. And people want to go to the gym and learn something and then repeat it over and over. Honestly, human nature, people want to do that anyway, which I've learned a lot in my career is that people want to get one thing and they just want to repeat it over and over. And it's so normal because it's so calming because we look
comfort.
we really look for things that are in our habits and that we can do every day. And that really is, and especially in a world that's changing, that's very soothing for a lot of people. But I'm sure you can see the problem when we talk about growth and being repetitive. Because if we stay in the same hamster wheel, we'll be very, very content because we know what we're doing there. But are we going to continue to grow?
That's not where the changes happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, unfortunately, it. However, we both started in the same exact path as I'm sure most gym goers. I want to go to the gym. I'm 20 years old. I want to look, like a rock star. And I'm going to go and do arm day, and then I'm going to do abs, and then I'm going to do 45 minutes on the Stairmaster, right? Is that like how you started the gym?
Yeah, I did less of a like arm, and I was much later into hitting some of the weights. I was like a really big cardio queen. Because in my mind, I mean, I had a lot of issues. I had a lot of disordered eating with food and just like the need to be smaller. So I was just like in with like cardio and abs and cardio and abs. And like, that's how I will get smaller. So it was not until like much later that I was like stronger is a thing that actually is important.
Okay. I definitely was not I was dissimilar to you in that way. I definitely was like, I want to have like muscles that you can see, like biceps and stuff. And but the way that I went about trying to build that strength and that aesthetic was, as I said, and it kind of led me into the world of bodybuilding where I had a lot of qualms with what was going on there.
Mhm.
Um, and the reason why I want to encourage people to take some of the bodybuilding methodology and use what is good, but maybe leave the rest is because sometimes it can come with some unwanted things, right?
Yeah.
For me, bodybuilding came with a lot of diet culture. So it was, we're going to go to the gym, we're going to go home and eat boiled chicken and brown rice and steamed broccoli. I can almost smell it actually right now. It was the most disgusting smelling thing. And then I made that, 5 times and put them in my containers. And this is how I was going to cut, right? There's a lot of bulk cut, all these cheat meals. This whole mentality is very associated with bodybuilding. And for me, that led to a lot of disordered eating habits. That led to a lot of I'm starving during the week, and I'm completely binging on weekends. It led to a lot of focus on aesthetics and sort of the idea that healthy food was meant to be disgusting, that it was like, this has to taste extremely gross because like I'm in a cut right now and like I have to suffer in this way. And so I have never really been a fan of the way that bodybuilding sort of comes hand in hand with this dieting culture of like, we need to reduce the body fat to the littlest it possibly can be. And that comes with like a lot of starving, a lot of misery, and a lot of disordered thoughts around food.
Well, I think that I just want to make sure that people understand that this isn't really that's not really an opinion because when you put so much focus on the aesthetics and that those are the goals that we're setting, so those are the parameters in which we're measuring our success, it comes with these other things, right? We don't have like aesthetic goals without dieting. They can't really, it's really difficult for them to exist separately. So when it comes to bodybuilding, I think that the biggest qualm there, along with, some of the diet culture, is just the pure focus on aesthetics and that being the markers for success. That's really difficult to kind of sustain over a long period of time and to separate from some of the other disordered eating that or disordered body image
Yep.
that is going to just happen throughout your life. Your body's going to continuously change, and if the sole focus is on aesthetics, and it's like I watched this muscle work, and that's honestly like that's what led me into some of the bodybuilding things, was picking out certain areas of my body that I didn't like an arm, and I'm like, oh well, I should do tricep extensions because
Right.
like this is wiggly, right? So that's what I understand from bodybuilding, is that you isolate certain muscle groups, and that's how you get we'll talk about how problematic this is, but that's how you decrease the body fat in that area, which we know to be inaccurate. But, the idea there is to work a certain isolated body area to improve the look of that. And it's really all comes back to aesthetics and the look of your body.
Speaking on that, I had it in a different category as dieting for me, but I can see why you would put it all together. And, speaking on that, just being, an athlete and a competitive person, I also struggled in this area because for me, the pinnacle of, bodybuilding was essentially to become show ready, right? You'd want to be in a show. That would mean that you had achieved the goal, and that's the sport version of, what you're doing. And I always have to take it to the sport version because that's the nature of who I am. So that was a real problem for me, because when I got to seeing what, the pinnacle of that looked like as a sport, it looked like a lot of dehydration. It looked like a lot of starving. It the biggest problem.
A lot of tan.
A lot of tan, that's for sure. I didn't mind that so much. I love a good tan.
Like, that wasn't the first thing.
The real problem that I had at the end of the day was the being judged by others in a bikini aspect. That felt a certain type of way for me because, obviously the nature of bodybuilding is an intense focus on aesthetics and what you look like, staring at yourself in the mirror and kind of like saying, okay, which is the area that needs improvement, right? But having that walk around on a stage and having other people say whether or not it looked good, like these like people that didn't know me, and yes, I'm going to decide that your triceps didn't meet my requirements. That all felt really contrary to like my beliefs as a human being. Just like as a woman, like me being on stage in a bikini and having other people say whether or not my body looked good enough to win a prize, that just didn't jive for me. Like it just made me feel a certain type of way. And then like, obviously the other thing that made me feel a little strange about it being an athlete was like, on your best day, on your performance day, you're the weakest you've ever been. Like, if anyone who's ever done a show knows, like if you tried to lift any of the weights that you would normally do in your sets leading up to that day on your actual day, you would like literally have muscle spasms because of the dehydration and the weakness that comes with leading up to a show. So like, and also you're in 6-inch heels. So what are we supposed to do? Like anytime you tell me that this sport is going to happen and I'm going to do it in 6-inch heels, I'm like, wait a minute. Are you sure this is a sport?
Are you sure? I don't know if that,
because that's just me. That's just me. But I've also never met a bodybuilder, even after they've won a trophy at a show, that said like, I'm so happy with my body. I love the way it looks. Never in my life. They say, I'm so happy winning this trophy. And for next time, I'm going to get this ab fat down. I'm going to make the booty a little higher. It's that never ending quest for perfection that I'm not sure is good for a lot of people's psyches.
Yeah, 100%. I think that happens a lot of times after a competition, though. I think people look at where they could improve and where they could do better. So I think that is, it is a level of normalcy when it comes to some type of competition. But when it comes down to, and I think that a lot of, I don't want this to come out wrong of like, attack on bodybuilding, because we are going to talk about some of the benefits, but I'm also going to stay true to exactly who I am, who has always had an issue with bodybuilding competitions, being in the health category, because it's not healthy at all. So, and there's not really an argument around that. Like,
no, competitors will tell you that they are at the least healthy they possibly could be on show day.
And leading up to as well. Like they, anyone who is entering in a competition, there's a ton of disordered eating that leads up to it. And bodybuilders will definitely tell you this. And then following, the big binging, and so it's the deprivation and then the binging that follows, the dehydration, the disordered eating is baked into this. I'm gonna airborne sport because I just can't do it. So if you're watching on YouTube, I'm only gonna be me. But it's really baked into it. And this is a health and fitness podcast, and we're going to talk about health, and we're going to talk about fitness. And there are aspects of fitness that come out of bodybuilding that are useful for you in your everyday life. But when it comes to health, when we're singularly talking about bodybuilding, and when we're just talking about putting the focus on aesthetics, looking at the whole person and what we're looking to build from confidence and for our better relationship with our body, it's just not done when we're placing all of our like how well we do on how well we look, and if we look good enough, or if we have a lean enough body fat percentage, and that if our performance is good enough when people are judging it from what they think, and not on anything that actually, like, your performance, like how well you did. So that's where, because when you're looking at the whole person, you're looking at, there is discipline there is confidence to be built there. But confidence, when you look at it, real confidence is built from the inside out. And that's why I tell you guys day in and day out that you will not have confidence when you get to that bikini body ready, whichever you've decided that is, or that weight that whatever you've decided that is. Confidence doesn't show up knocking at your door and said, you finally are at 110.
I've been waiting for you, girl.
I've been waiting. And then it just enters in your body, and then you just walk around with all this confidence. It just doesn't happen like that. It's built slowly over time. And that confidence in your body that's built when you can see the results of what you actually can do. And that's where it becomes this kind of like hit or miss with a lot of people, because your genetics is going to play a significant role on what you're able to achieve aesthetically. And you're going to get a lot of kickback when you've tried so hard for a lot of, women especially, to meet this type of aesthetic that is just not sustainable for you. Maybe even you can't get there for that short period of time that people want to just like relish in that time. Like it might not even be possible for you.
Genetically.
So when we put all the emphasis there on something that can't even be achieved when we're looking at health and fitness, like, we want to set ourselves up for things that we are able to achieve, for the confidence that we're able to get, for the confidence in our bodies and our health and our mind and our spirit, and just like leading into the rest of our lives. And that's where I have the biggest problem with so much of the bodybuilding mentality.
Absolutely. I mean, the mental aspects, in diet and aesthetics are definitely there. And then there's some practical things that also never really jived with me when it comes to bodybuilding. First of all, the sessions needed to be way too long.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was isolating, let's say arms, and I was going to do 6 different exercises, and each of them required 12 reps each, and in five sets. And then I had to somehow get some cardio in, right? Because I have a fat burning goal at the same time. I'm going to isolate these muscles, build them up. Then I have to melt the fat off my body on, the Stairmaster to hell of like staring at a TV for 45 minutes trying to like convince myself that I'm having fun. And then don't forget, I got to end with abs, because we have to, make sure we got that flat tummy. That all together, 30-minute lifting session, 45 minutes of cardio, and 20 minutes of an ab circuit. Now, I haven't even warmed up or cooled down, and I'm well over an hour. So it was taking me like a solid 2 hours at the gym every day. And that just wasn't going to be sustainable 5 days a week for me. I knew that I couldn't keep that up.
Quick interruption, because we want to help your hair, skin, and nails. That's what we're here for.
That's what we're here for. We're those kind of girls. Hair, skin, and nails cannot get better than
your joints will feel better as well. But if you haven't tried our collagen called Glow Up, it is amazing.
If you're going to try with the code that we're going to give you, just go ahead and call your hairdresser now for your cut, because your hair is going to grow way faster. Your nails are going to be way stronger. And just overall, adding it a little to your coffee every day. It's completely tasteless, dissolves beautifully. You are going to love the results you have. So we've got a code for you. If you've never tried our collagen, why don't you try it today for 20% off?
The code is glow up, just for you guys who listen to our podcast. So go try the collagen for 20% off and get your hair, skin, and nails right.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about that 5 days too is when we talk about the bro split, missing days is really difficult.
It's huge.
Because when you have a let's call it back and buy day. When you have the back and buy day and it's your only back and buy day that day, maybe some days you can't make it 5 days a week.
Right.
And, once you start missing those, and I know everyone's saying that happens with, every other type of training too, but just let me finish, guys.
Let you finish.
Let me finish that. Because when you miss those, that day, and that it's just isolated to those specific muscle groups, and your other training days are isolated to the other specific muscle groups, you've missed that muscle group completely. When you look at other training programs that have functional movements involved, even if that day's strength is something like a bench press and an overhead press, and you're like, well, I missed my pressing that day. But you also may have had burpees or push-ups. And what are you doing? You're pressing. So when you move into things that are just more all-encompassing with functional movements, you don't completely miss muscle groups in your entire training session. So you're able to sustain something like, missing some days per week without it being completely catastrophic. And you know this because a lot of bodybuilders get very upset if they miss one of their days. And it's come with the very structured meal planning. And we're talking about people are very serious with their bodybuilding, with their very structured times, and they're like, well, I can't miss that day. And you certainly can't add it on to another day because you're already there for an hour and a half.
Yeah. And I will say,
2 hours.
As a coach, that missing, your back and buy day and then going and saying like, okay, well, I'm going ahead and going to do my push day. Chest and tries. Sorry. I forgot my bro splits.
I know.
Chest and tries. Here's the thing. All of those muscle groups work together. And I never, ever have my athletes push without pulling and pull without pushing. Either you'll see pushing in the warm up and pulling in the Metcon, or you'll see pulling in the warm up and pushing in the Metcon. Like those muscle groups have to work together. And so just having a whole entire week where you only have worked the one half of the muscle groups that work together, it can cause, and this is what I'm going to in the next one.
This really is a nice segue to the next one.
It really is. You got to be careful with isolating in injuries. The repetitive nature of the bro split. Listen, anything in repetition, although comforting, although awesome, is a recipe for overuse. I say that to runners all the time. Listen,
it's
you
not
cannot
just you
run
guys,
5 days a week. Please stop running 5 days a week. Okay. The repetitive nature on the tendons and ligaments that's a recipe for injury. We need to be moving in all different movement patterns all the time in functional ways that are going to offset some of the repetitive pounding, pushing, pulling, the things that like are present in your everyday life. So, I always tell people with bodybuilding, like, don't get stuck in that same bro split for 6 months to a year and realize you haven't changed, and then wonder why like your shoulder is like acting up. Like it's acting up because we are in way too much repetition of movement.
Well, I thought those mentioning injuries when it comes to bodybuilding is very important because I think a lot of people are not associating any, especially if you're on the newer side and you're like, well, it's a slow and controlled tempo movement. Not always tempo, but it's a slower controlled movement. But we know with the majority of injuries, they're overuse injuries.
Yeah.
They're not because you used your fast twitch muscles.
Not usually. No.
And the reality is,
It was the 12 beers before the shot.
it was the 12 beers before the shot. Like when we are continuously overusing any specific, this isn't just for bodybuilders. This is definitely for runners. This is definitely for CrossFitters as well. If you're going to do the same thing over and over. Power lifters, if you're going to just like repetitively do and not train, different ways and not switch it up. And I know people are like, well, there are different tricep exercises. Like, yeah, maybe like you find a new one that you're isolating in the same way, and we're like, okay.
Same ligaments.
Yeah. But it's really important to think about the fact that those are overuse, and to just insert the fact that you have fast and slow twitch for a reason, and they should both be trained. So when we get into some of the benefits of bodybuilding, you'll hear some of that sprinkled in there, because there is a benefit to isolating muscle groups and moving at a slower pace. There's absolutely benefit there. So as much as there is benefit there, there's also benefit in training your fast twitch. So
I mean, we name the company Constantly Varied, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, it was never like part of, not the plan. It's always been the most complete way is to do it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we know this, but like we do have to like go to work and stuff and like take showers and sometimes
and work on the other pillars of our health, where we're looking about our spiritual health, our mental health, our relationship health, where we're looking at all of those. So it's like, oh, you haven't done all of those today and isolated every muscle group and trained your explosive movements. Like, what are you doing? But we're going to talk about that.
I have the formula, you guys. It's very exciting because as we just like kind of pulled bodybuilding through the ringer.
Shredder, yeah.
It is undeniable that it is a tried and true method for building aesthetic muscle. Like facts.
No one's gonna take that sound clip though.
I know. They're only gonna take me being like, oh my God, bodybuilding is the worst. Nobody ever wait, I have more to say. It's tried and true. It builds aesthetic muscle. You go to any bodybuilding show and there is undeniable. Whatever they're doing has built muscle. Mm-hmm. And it looks fantastic. So it's got great principles. It just maybe doesn't stand alone as a training program for a lot of people. So here's the great things about bodybuilding that we can take and put into a more complete functional, metabolic, compound movements, all of these things. We can put the methods that bodybuilding has and say like, hey, maybe we can go to a combining. Tempo, I don't feel is utilized enough in functional fitness. A functional fitness for me has gone to a place where it is really, really focused on explosive movements, which are fantastic, by the way. But I see a lot of gyms lacking in their tempo work. And I don't feel, and I'm going to say this until the cows come home, that one can ever exist without the other. We absolutely have to be doing tempo work as well as explosive work in order to be the most complete, healthiest, happiest version of ourselves.
100%. Explosive movements honestly shouldn't exist without tempo. Tempo shouldn't exist without explosive movements. Explosive movements are fantastic for functional fitness. That's how those two kind of come together. But, slowing it down and working on tempo work can do a lot of things for people. Number one, it can build a lot of confidence in the way that they are moving and allow them to feel the muscle groups that we would like for them to actually feel. And they can't do that at a faster pace. And I know, like, you know, I if you follow any type of my training, I'm like, I love functional movements. Tempo work is always in my training. Always. It's not the
Sucks
sexiest
though.
thing.
It
It
sucks.
sucks. It's not the sexiest thing for me personally. It's not my favorite because slowing down isn't my favorite. But it's really important for injury prevention, which is something we just talked about as kind of a negative, but don't take this out of context. Now, repeating that over and over can cause injury. Taking those tempo movements and putting them in with functional movements then is injury prevention. Because
Ooh. Ooh, you said it, girl.
And learning how those certain muscle groups work can get you really in touch with your body on how it's moving. And I really love that because I think a lot of people, and you'll see this over and over, if you've ever coached anything, or you've told, like, sit up or pull your shoulder blades back, and you watch people try and figure out where their shoulder blades are.
Have those? Did I come with those?
Do you know what I mean? Like, pinch them together. You know, you
Get those
try to
on
do
Amazon?
You get those on Amazon. And you try to do several tactical cues for people trying to feel where these muscle groups are. Now, if they're always moving too quickly, they're never feeling where those muscle groups are and how to activate them, which is very important for translating that into any functional movements. You have to learn how to activate your muscles. When we slow things down, you learn activation and you learn how to build up some of those muscles that will then translate. A couple other things that are just very important when it comes to tempo work: balance, stability, rehab, and muscle growth. Balance, if you're a younger person, you might not be thinking about this, but I think you should, because I've put out several challenges that have tested people's balance, and I think that a lot of you guys were surprised at where your balance currently is. And it's one of the most important things for you to live a longer, healthier life. Your balance is. So when we work on tempo work, we can really work on your balance. And again, just going back to when you're isolating certain muscle groups, you're getting in touch with those muscle groups and feeling how they activate, so that when we translate that into something functional, they know to turn on.
So, my favorite thing about isolating muscle groups is the body brain connection that is built when you tell one muscle group, it's your turn. It's your turn. It's your day. I think that, you know, training at a high metabolic output is fantastic, but it does not ever allow you to isolate any one muscle group. It allows your hamstrings to constantly hide behind your overactive quads. And you may not even know, without isolation and tempo work, that your quads were doing all the work to begin with. So here's what I love about isolation. It doesn't let anybody hide, because you're telling the one muscle it has to go. And then when it doesn't, you go, oh shit, man, what have you been doing? And now I know that I need to have some focus there, right? And then it also really, it gives you this body brain connection, like you were saying, where when someone tells you turn on your lats, you not only know where they are, but you have the
Wherewithal.
the wherewithal and the connection with your brain to actually activate it when it's called for. And that helps you in your functional movements, because when someone's telling you during your deadlifts, like, hey, you're absolutely not activated in your lats, like pull your lats together, you can immediately act on that cue, right? And that you'll become every coach's favorite person. And last but not least, what I love about bodybuilding is, guys, the pump is real.
It is. It is.
The pump is real. I mean, this is going to sound a little bit vain, and I'm okay with that, because I think people love the pump.
They do love the pump.
What's not to love?
You know, I've fought with this for a long time, because I I'm a person who has a really hard time getting a pump. Not like getting a pump because you can see my muscles, but they just don't sometimes like stand out as much as I want them to for how in the past how good I have been at my sport or how strong I've been. And I'm like, wow, you can't tell. And then you see a bodybuilder walk by and I'm like, first of all, I know I can outlift you. I know I can run faster than you. Do you want to do a workout like head to head? Because like I just need to prove this to myself.
So this is the thing.
Because the pump is like, huh?
It's a very different look. We can
Yeah.
say, okay, look, we can line up a bodybuilder next to a powerlifter and we can say which one is which. It's very obvious because it is a different look. We can also line up a bodybuilder and a CrossFitter. Now, a CrossFitter has more of the tendencies aesthetically of a bodybuilder because unlike powerlifters, there is a little bit more metabolic demand there. But it has a look, right? And I want to explain to people why bodybuilding has a pump because there is some science behind it because the pump is real.
Mm-hmm.
When you isolate muscle groups with higher volume and bigger rep counts, it creates a situation where the muscle has increased fluid retention. So basically, it looks puffier.
Yeah.
It has more glycogen stores from the type of training that you're doing, and it looks puffier because it's retaining more fluids and glycogen. However, my problem with this in the past has been that bodybuilders are sometimes accused of, oh, bless you.
I tried to mute.
No, I think you did, but I saw it anyways, but bless you. You just got off a plane. You need to make sure you take your vitamin C.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. I will.
Okay. You can't even sneeze in my house without my husband being like, you need a vitamin C. But sometimes bodybuilders have been accused of all show, no go because of the way. What?
That seems like the worst thing to be accused of.
Well,
Every man listening
great.
is like,
Oh, I don't want that. Because it looks great, right? The muscle is very puffy.
Defined.
But when it's asked, it's very defined. When it's asked to perform, it gets outlifted by a power lifter 10 times out of 10, right? So it's that different training methodology where CrossFitters and powerlifters are better with the strength output where they can, what their 1 rep maxes are higher typically. And bodybuilders, because they work in this muscle endurance kind of setting, they have a puffier, larger looking muscle, but it isn't quite as strong. And people know when you want a strength build, you don't go high rep. That's just not what you do.
No, it's there for aesthetics, and that's not that's
why I said all show no go.
That's not there for functionality for sure. But that that puffiness, and I know a lot of people think like some CrossFitters are well defined, can look really defined, similar to a bodybuilder. But when you really look at two people at the tip of their sport, they don't look.
No,
they're definitely both muscular, but they don't look the same. And the reason why, you have some of that puffier result with some of those muscle groups, and you don't really get that as much with CrossFit because there is so much of a metabolic aspect to that. You just don't get that same, puffiness that I don't know if puffiness is the right word that everyone wants to hear, but it really is just like how those muscles are standing.
They're standing out more.
At attention.
Yeah, they're standing at attention. Yeah, no, it's true. But although that methodology isn't necessarily maximizing your ability to build strength, they do have excellent muscle endurance, right? Because they work in those higher rep counts. And here's where it all comes together. We can do both.
Yes.
Right? And that's what this cycle is going to show, that we can get the aesthetic and injury prevention and muscle memory, muscle brain connection, and eliminating, groups of muscles that are working not in equal amounts, the quad dominant people. We can eliminate all of that and get a nice pump while still using our metabolic output in a way that we're moving functionally. We are still training fast twitch muscles, and we are still maintaining our strength and not sacrificing it for purely muscle endurance. There is a way to combine all those things, and it's this new cycle, guys.
So what we're gonna do is, without spending, because honestly, when you go through all of that and you say like, yeah, okay, some of those sound great. I'd like to take the good, leave the bad, but also insert some functional things because I'm a human on this planet and I want to be healthy and live my life. And but that sounds like a whole ass job. It really does. Like when
It is. It's
you
my job, though.
yeah, but it sounds like a whole ass job when it comes to what your type of training will be in the gym. And I just want to assure you that just because, you combine some of these training methodologies, take the good, leave the bad, doesn't mean you take the whole thing, because there is the bad that we're leaving behind. And when you leave some of that and we think about what that time will look like in the gym, we're taking the good things. We're not having you spend 2 hours in the gym.
No.
You also get some functional training in and have it all come together in a really nice way. And I just want to say, the things that she mentioned are things that we're taking, not that we're eliminating. But the things that we're taking and what we're eliminating from all that is, the body dysmorphia, the focus on aesthetics, some of the overall repetitiveness, the time required in there, and the extreme dieting. We're going to leave that. Okay. We're going to leave that. We're not asking you to put any mirrors in your gym.
No, thank you.
And you're definitely not going to flex in front of them, but you might have a nice pump. Either
You
way.
are going to have a nice pump. You are going to have a nice pump. You don't have to do anything in 6-inch heels, but you're going to have a nice pump. And we are starting this on June 3rd. Love to have you join us. It's a 6-week cycle. So it'll run June 3rd through the second week of July. And you are going to not only get a nice pump, we're going to be working on a ton of tempo, but so we're going to isolate in a functional way, which is like, I think all of the training methodologies beautifully brought together, where we have you moving in a way that is isolating muscle groups to determine imbalances, to correct imbalances. But at the same time, you're moving in a functional way that allows you to be better at your life. And that to me is got to be the goal. We are not getting on the Stairmaster for 45 minutes of trashy TV. Instead, we are going to still be training our conditioning, and our metabolic output is still going to be remaining high. We're going to do it with weights. We're going to keep strength building, but we're also going to
We're going to be present.
Yeah, we're going to be present, right? But we're
session.
also going to include this extremely important work of isolating and tempo, which is just it's going to help you in so many ways, and you're going to look great.
Awesome.
If that's what you're here for.
Like, yeah, but tell me, I know, no, a lot of people listening, and you know what it is. You know where your priorities are. You have, you can move them throughout your life. This is your life. You decide what your priorities are, but we're here to help you to be the happiest, healthiest humans possible. And I think this is a really great cycle. If you've never tried it, but you've kind of wondered, it would be a great little 6-week test for you to see if this is something that you like.
Absolutely. I think that people are going to be super surprised with how many of these movements they can bring into their everyday training, how many of these movements they are really, really shitty at. Like, whoa, what happened?
Opportunity for growth.
It's such a great opportunity for growth. And I would encourage you, we'll have the link in the show notes if you want to join us for this cycle. It's going to be amazing. Link in the show notes. And I would really encourage you to, if nothing else, join this cycle to sort of bring some of this methodology into your training. If all you have is a pair of dumbbells, we'll do it with that. You're going to get so much out of this cycle. It's going to be outstanding.
Yeah. I just wanted to mention, if you have any, if you guys have any other questions about like specific to you, or if you can do this, hop on our Facebook group. We can also link that, or you can just comment on the podcast wherever you're listening to it, and ask us some of those, because we have like coaches and Rachel available to like answer any, or me to answer any of your other questions that you might have like coming into this. But the Facebook group or our app is really the best place to reach any of us. The whole tribe is in there, and an entire coaching staff that's ready to help and answer your individual questions. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this podcast, got some good and some bad. I know all of the sound bites are going to be us dragging bodybuilding.
Oh my
And
God.
then I'm going to
Cue
be like,
the bodybuilding pitchforks. Here they come.
I'm going to be honest. Like, I think, how long have we done this podcast? 5 years?
5 years.
I think maybe when you get to a certain point, like, it's like, I knew that. Like, I just don't care. It's just like, the sound bites are going to come and people are going to, take things out of context. But then it's just like, don't care. I'm going to say what I think. And the real ones know and listened to the entire podcast, not a sound bite, and heard what was said about, the good, the bad, and the evil, and how we can always take and from a critical eye the good things and leave behind some of the toxic things. Like, there are a ton of toxic things in health and fitness, especially in bodybuilding. Like, if you're going to argue with me on that, I'm like, okay, well, we just don't speak the same language, because
why are we doing this podcast then if it's not to bust up all those toxic things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we know they're out there.
We do.
But yeah, it's about thinking critically, and it's about accepting the fact that there really is no one size fits all. There really is no one methodology that has it all figured out. The best training is going to take all the best from all of them, and it's going to be constantly varied. I'll die on that hill. I will die right on that hill. It's going to include all the best methodology, and it's going to absolutely be constantly varied. So come join us.